Children, especially attractive, well-bred young ladies, should never talk to strangers, or if they should do so, they may well provide dinner for a wolf. I say wolf, but there are various kinds of wolves. There are also those who are charming, quiet, polite, unassuming, complacent, and sweet, who pursue young women at home and in the streets. And unfortunately, it is these gentle wolves who are the most dangerous ones of all. One day I came face to face with the kind of wolf Charles Perrault described. When I was a child, I used to spend the summers at my grandmother's house. It was my chance to wander in the woods, along creeks, and explore abandoned houses in search of treasures I never found. One late afternoon, as I was walking past some old houses, an elderly man appeared at the window. He started asking me questions about who I was and where my family was. I replied politely and he invited me in. He told me he had a treat for me. I think I was 8 years old, and that man's face is still carved in my memory, sending shivers down my spine. I refused politely and started to walk away from the house. I felt terror when he started to shout at me. He kept insisting for me to come inside, that I would be very surprised with all the good stuff he had there. When he realized I wasn't obeying him, his tone suddenly changed. He started to spit curses at me. That was the validation I needed for the feelings I had. He was an evil man. After that day, I never went back to that path. Unfortunately, to reach the fields filled with wild berries, that path was a necessity. So, for the following years, I didn't eat a berry, fearing I might encounter that man again. Intuitively, I knew I had escaped something bad, but at that time I didn't have ways to convey it into words. Media in general also didn't help, for whenever I encountered the story of the Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf, it had been turned into a joke. A satirical joke where both wolf and girl weren't able to control their lust and desire. When I was 20, I watched with great excitement the 10th Kingdom series. It was a delight for me to watch a show about fairy tales, and I was mesmerized by the wolf character. So charming, beautiful, and funny. However, 25 years later, I watched the show again, this time with my daughter. But the wolf was no longer charming to me. Underneath all the funny renditions and an attractive man, the danger was always there. He was a wolf, and he was able to tear who he wanted apart. And that's the crux of getting old and starting to perceive Baba Yaga in a different lens. I stopped being able to laugh when serious problems are conveyed as funny little things that happen. A certain kind of violence in media and also in society in general is silenced and their victims are ridiculed. That's why the crimes of the wolf in the Little Red Riding Hood were minimized by people. She was wearing red, she was obviously trying to attract the male gaze. Even in the uses of enchantment, the author stresses how the red color was a way to convey sexual awakening. It is a pity when these authors reveal their inner prejudices and their misleading beliefs. He was talking about a child and was able to make it as if she was indeed asking for it. That's the problem of psychoanalysis. Somehow they were able to make everything about sex and the urges to conquer it, even if it is non-consensual sex. The argument ends up destroying not only the purpose of the story, its inner core, but also to reveal a far more destructive mentality. Women in fairy tales, in the eyes of many, are just objects of desire, nothing more. And that's my main critique about these kinds of analysis. Women and children are dispossessed of humanity, of wants, and of agency. The little child dressed in red was alone in the forest, and she didn't know the wolf was evil. She had never seen one before, and no one had warned her about it. She didn't ask for trouble, she was innocent. Let's not forget about the other victim. No one dares to say the bedridden grandmother was asking for it. How could it be possible? The argument crumbles by itself if the old lady is honestly considerate. However, she isn't. There's a veil of invisibility placed over her. She's like a footnote that no one reads. That's why I find the version of Mary, Hassenpflug, remarkably fascinating. She told her version to the Brothers Grimm, where the child knows the wolf wants to eat her. She runs to her grandmother to warn her, and the old woman devises a plan to end the wolf's life. They are able to kill the beast, and the child is no longer harmed. It is Perrault, more or less a century before, that presents a version of a charming wolf. A polite, sweet and quiet man that conceals his bestiality underneath. But there's also another important characteristic about him that I don't usually see being brought to the table. This fairy tale presents three distinct phases of a woman: the child, the mother, and the crone. Of the three, it is only the mother that remains safe. The wolf is a coward and opportunistic predator. He dares not to face a healthy and adult woman. She might resist, she might scream, or worse, she might fight back. And then she lives in the village, surrounded by people that might come to her rescue. He also doesn't pursue the child in the forest. It is too dangerous for him. Someone might hear her cries. So he plans his evil attack. Now that sweet young thing is a tasty bite for me. She will taste even better than the old woman. You must be sly, and you can catch them both. Inside the house, he knows he might get away with it, in particular a house that is isolated from the village. After he deals with the bedridden old woman, he lures the child to the bed and devours her. He is so full of confidence that he will not be caught, that he just lays on the bed sleeping without a single care crossing his mind. He has devised a perfect plan. No one caught him, and he was able to fulfill his evil desires of control and destruction. He uses isolated prey for his purpose. He is not powerful, he is just opportunistic. And that trait of personality is indeed a clear sign of danger. The coward man is satisfied. But in one of the versions presented by the Hassenpflug women, a huntsman hears commotion from the house. The child and the old woman are saved and the wolf is killed and skinned. In these versions, the punishment for sexual assault is death. However, in Perrault's version, the wolf is victorious and the child is blamed for the actions that led to her death. And that opens the door to a dangerous and complicated problem that society has mostly failed to address. If a woman was raped, the location of the crime was taken in high consideration. If it had happened in the field, it was obvious that no one could have helped or listened to cries for help. However, if it had happened inside the city walls, well, that was a completely different story. For some incomprehensible reason, male legislators believed that the act of rape was impossible in a well-populated zone. And if no one had heard her, if the woman hadn't cried for help, there remained just two options. Or she was a liar, or she had consented. It is quite remarkable that the fairy tale specifically states that grandmother lived in the cabin in the woods. Although there's a factor of isolation, it is implicit that no one would have been able to hear any cry for help. and therefore her account would be believed. The collective mind that created this story felt the need to be quite specific about the location of the grandmother. The only way for a woman to be taken seriously was the exact location of the crime. Her voice was silenced if the crime had happened in a more or less public space. See, this still happens. If a woman is raped by a celebrity, a football player in the party, there are always people assuming she must be lying, for she wasn't alone there. The scrutiny gets worse if she entered willingly into his house. As if not enough, other accusations are laid against the character of the woman. She is after money, attention, fame, or that she consented but later regretted. The woman is punished no matter what, and the wolf gets away with it. Everyone knows boys will be boys. According to Susan Brownmiller in Against Our Will, Men, Women and Rape, rape is not about sexual lust, it is about power, control, destruction, and the need to humiliate and to shame the victim. Since women are the main targets of this crime, they have been carrying the weight of being responsible for protecting themselves, and also the weight of shame for failing to do so. Personal defense classes for women have been popping up in my city in recent years. When I was younger, I thought it was a great idea. The older I get, the idea of laying upon women one more added responsibility angers me. Why should women in a civilized society still have the additional financial burden of learning how to protect themselves against men? The underlying issue is still the same. The responsibility falls upon women. However, the majority of sex offenders are men. This leaves a very important and uncomfortable question hanging over our heads. Is society really doing everything to protect the potential targets of these wolves? A man who becomes a wolf has lost his sense of self. He has lost his humanity. Only someone inhuman treats the other with no regard for the value and dignity of human life. Behind those cruel eyes lies a void of irrational control and an addiction for power, in order to feed what is already rotten to its core. The fairy tale of the Red Little Riding Hood is about a man that intoxicates himself by the power and control he feels when he preys upon defenseless little children and older women. It is a tale older than the pyramids. It is a sad echo of that ancient violence rooted in the belief that a group of individuals, men, is better than the other, women. Although my 40-something self didn't find the wolf of the 10th kingdom alluring, I kept watching it. Indeed, he starts as a vicious man, but he completes his arc of redemption by changing his inner nature and placing the lives of his friends and the woman he fell in love with above his own life. He decides to change and therefore he becomes a hero. He completes his journey and tames the wolf. He indeed transforms into a man, a human. However, the wolf of the fairy tale must die. He never changes, so how could he be spared? He is a monster. In his version, Charles Perrault decided to use the story as a mirror, a terrifying reflection of reality. The little child was destroyed as well as the old woman. Two phases of womanhood, the potential of life and the gathered wisdom, devoured and ruthlessly swallowed by a monster. And he calmly and patiently sleeps, waiting.